I would never give up on my brother. He would never give up on me. I will never stop until I find my brother, no matter how long it takes.
That was Melissa Estes, sister of missing person Jonathan Estes. She's trying to find answers for her family. She's working very hard to raise awareness, and we're going to try to help her today. Do you have the information that this family is desperately seeking? It's time to turn on the searchlight for Jonathan Estes. John Lorden here. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Brainscratch Searchlight. So the case of Jonathan Estes, this is a very tough case because the logistics of his disappearance, there are a few facts, but when it comes to the drama that was going on in his life leading up to his disappearance, it's almost like there's a lot more of that information. So I'm going to try to do coverage here, balancing both of those out. We still need to know what was going on in his life to know if that's a factor in his disappearance. I think there's a good chance of that, so I'm going to try to incorporate as much of that as I can. A very big thank you to Christy Arnhart for helping me research today's case, and I want to give a special shout out also to the Unfound Podcast, who did an in-depth interview with Jonathan's sister, Melissa. I'm going to try to sprinkle in some of those details as we're going through the sources, but once again, just a very big thank you to Unfound for doing good work on that. Let's start at the Namus profile. Missing person, Jonathan Paul Estes, a male, white Caucasian. Date of last contact, they have listed here as June 2nd, 2018. The story kind of floats around on that a little bit. I've seen that he was actually last seen on June 1st, but it seems like he spoke to a friend of his on June 2nd, but I don't know if that person actually got to see him. I don't think there's any doubt that it was really him on June 2nd. So that's why they call it date of last contact here in Namus. But you'll see as we're going through the sources, that date might move around a little bit. Missing from Bogachito, Mississippi. And I've looked up pronunciations on that. I've found so many different ones. I don't know which one's correct. So that's the one that I'm going to go with for today's episode. But please excuse the mispronunciation if I didn't hit that right. He went missing at the age of 35. He would currently be 36 years old. Nickname or alias is John. He stands between 6 foot to 6 foot 1 inch tall, weighs 150 to 175 pounds. And let's see what we have for circumstances of disappearance. John Paul Estes was last seen June 2nd. Estes's truck was found abandoned near his old home on Wallace Drive shortly after investigators had contacted him by phone, but neither law enforcement nor Estes's family has heard from him since. So even in that description of this disappearance, you can get a sense of, wait, we've got law enforcement contacting him and then he disappears. There's a lot more to this story, and we're going to get into it. Hair color, brown. His eyes, here they're describing them as brown as well. I've seen other places where they describe them as hazel, so you might want to keep that in mind. In terms of distinctive physical features, we've got a tattoo on his back. I've seen in several places where it's an eagle. I have seen some conversation that it might be a cross, or maybe people are seeing it as a cross. An eagle, if it's the right angle with its wings spread, I think people might be able to confuse that with a cross. But in most sources, I'm seeing that it's actually an eagle on his back. They don't have the transportation information listed here. From what I understand, his truck was a Dodge Ram. I believe it was white, and I think it was a later model. It does have some type of tracking system in it. I can't remember the name that they use for the Dodge vehicles, but we're going to get into that also. Of course, the vehicle's important in any disappearance, and especially some strange conditions around what happens with his. But as that description said, his home, and I guess this should be kind of clarified, he actually has another house, but on Wallace Drive is where he was living with his family. We're talking a wife and 2 children, but the relationship was not going well. So the Wallace Drive thing, they're talking about it because they're saying his truck was found abandoned near his old home on Wallace Drive. That was actually where his home with his family was, and it's a big piece of land that is owned owned by members of his wife's family. So apparently he kind of stashed the truck there somewhere, and investigators are pretty certain that he actually did this. I believe his friend actually called them and told them where the truck was. I know that we're already getting into a lot of weirdness with this case, but just try to keep all this in mind as we're going through these details. There's a lot to cover here. Let's learn a little bit more about this area. Bogachito is a census-designated place situated in Kemper and Neshoba counties, Mississippi. Population was 887 at the 2010 census. So we're talking very, very small community. It is part of the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians Reservation, and the population is 93% Choctaw. And just to learn a little bit more about that, Bogachito is a name with Choctaw origins. Bogachito derives from Bokchito, meaning big creek in Choctaw. So that's a little bit about the area. Let's start at the Charlie Project and get some more details here. And of course, a big thank you to Megan for pulling together another great composite with all these different photos of Jonathan. You can see his look can vary quite a bit. He's got a full beard in some, no beard in others. He shaved his head at one point, actually in a few of these photos, completely bald, but you can see his hair does grow in if he lets it grow in. So we've got opportunities for all kinds of different looks from him. On May 31st, 2018, he had a domestic dispute with his estranged wife, Cynthia Denise Cindy Estes, and she claims he assaulted her. On June 2nd, when police went to question him about it, he was gone. 2 weeks after he went missing, his truck was found abandoned in a field and turned over to Cindy. The Lincoln County Sheriff's Department initially refused to accept a missing persons report for Jonathan as they thought he was running from the law. Now, that is a very unfortunate twist in this whole case. They might be right. They could still be right, but I don't know why they would not accept a missing persons report, at least from his family. And even if he is running from the law, so what? Just process them both or add it to the case file. Like, I don't understand that was reasoning for them to not take the missing persons report. Well, we're already looking for him because we need to talk to him about this charge that, his estranged wife has said occurred. Now, what happened on that? The short version is on May 31st, he went over to present her with divorce papers. Things got out of hand. There was some type of physical altercation. She says there might have been a sexual assault involving a weapon. It's very, very serious allegations. She tried to get away, jumped in a car, wound up hitting him in the car, and then she went to the police station to report all this. So we've got a lot that's going on there. I have trouble with that version of the story just because there's information that we're going to find that the divorce had been talked about for a prolonged period of time. As a matter of fact, there's information straight from Cindy herself that you could find on YouTube. I'll have it in the links down below. And it's, well, Cindy didn't post it herself, but it's a recording of her talking about this. And it's very clear that they know they're separating. It's very clear that they know they're going for a divorce. It's video of him actually going to pick up some stuff at the family home. Here's just a quick little snapshot of it. So it's just strange to me that the version of the story that I'm seeing where, he goes to serve divorce papers. Well, in this video, which is supposedly from May 10th, 2018, they're already talking about divorce papers. He's saying that she had already served him with divorce papers, and he's saying that they weren't legal. I don't know what he means by that, but he had taken them to his lawyer to review them. So there's a lot, even in this video, there's a lot of charge behind their conversation, but they're not like yelling at each other. You could tell there's a lot of pain between both of them. He's accusing her of sleeping around while he's gone. She's alluding to the fact that he slept around previously and that, as a matter of fact, their lifestyle might have included them sleeping with other couples at some point in the past as well. So there's a lot that's going on, once again, in terms of the personal life stuff. Did that lead to his disappearance? Is it a factor in his disappearance? I don't know for sure, but I have to share it with you guys just because I think the odds are very good that there's some aspect of that is directly related to his disappearance. The I think that's about as far as we need to go with the details on that. But let's continue, and if anything else pops up, I'll let you guys know. The marriage had been troubled, and they had separated multiple times over the years. Jonathan was a contractor and had to travel regularly for his job. So one of the things that he's alluding to in that video is that while he's away working, she is being romantic with other people. In late April 2018, right before Jonathan took a 2-week trip to Texas, a work trip, Cindy said she wanted to divorce. When he returned home, the couple separated. Jonathan rented a house of his own. And that's also obvious from the YouTube video, is he's obviously in his own house. He's talking about picking up things to take them to his home. He's recording the whole interaction because he's waiting for police to show up. He's standing in the doorway, ultimately being pretty respectful of that boundary. I'm not seeing him really get too wound up or anything like that in the video. So not to say that, that's a perfect representation of who he is as a person, or that when he went to serve these papers or whatever happened on the 31st of May, that maybe he didn't respond a lot differently or come from a whole different place emotionally. These are just really, really tough things. The thing that breaks my heart in cases like this is the kids. There are 2 kids that are caught up in all this. In that YouTube video, she also makes it very clear that she's going to do everything she can to essentially stop him from seeing his own children. He makes it very clear that she can't do that, and he's got plenty of information about what she's been doing while he's gone. So just a lot of back and forth in that situation. Now, I did look through his Facebook page, and leading right up to his disappearance, he creates a lot of social media, a lot of things where he's celebrating his children. As a matter of fact, leading up to his disappearance, it looks like he took a trip with his daughter to Washington, D.C. I guess she was there for a church choir function, but they did a bunch of sightseeing while he was out there. Seems like a very caring father. There is certainly a very, very strong focus in his Facebook account on his children. You can also see that he was maybe going through some self-improvement stuff, which if you've ever gone through a separation, especially a divorce or a separation from a long-term relationship, that seems to be a normal component that comes in. You start kind of taking care of yourself differently. So I'm seeing all that. All those indicators are there. As a matter of fact, here's a posting from May 26th, 2018. Once again, from Washington, D.C., you can see that he is at the Arlington National Cemetery. Some gave all and all gave some. I have the deepest respect for everyone who has and is serving our great country. And I don't really want to get into pictures of the kids, but there's a ton of information in here to support that this is a guy that was very, very involved with his children's life and seemed like he was a pretty good dad. Admittedly, he had to work away from home, but from what I'm seeing here, he has a good relationship with his family, with his children. Of course, the situation with the wife at this point seems severely, severely strained. So let's get into the news stories and see what we can learn in terms of actual facts on this case, starting at WLBT. And this is just a quick image of Sheriff Rushing, who is working the case. A Lincoln County man has been missing for 9 months. His family says they've been searching, but now relatives and authorities need help. 2 days later, Lincoln County deputies went to question Estes regarding an alleged domestic dispute between he and his ex-wife. They were unable to locate him. So once again, they're talking about June 2nd. 2 months ago, Lincoln County Sheriff Steve Rushing says the trail went cold. They are asking the public for help now. The Estes family says they've hired a private investigator and also started to work with the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. So we've got a PI on the case. There is a reward that is being offered fairly quickly. Family is doing some things, running a billboard in the area and some other stuff like that. His sister working very hard on social media and going out, literally handing out flyers and things like that as well. Family working very hard on this case. Another article from WLBT.com, this one from July 28th, 2019. Loved ones and law enforcement held a meeting to plead the community for help Sunday. So keep in mind, this is over a year after he's been missing. Sheriff Steve Rushing was also there to answer questions. Sheriff Rushing admits he's never dealt with a cold case like this one. I mean, just in the last 2 days, we had 2 other missing persons cases that we literally cleared up within an hour. We probably worked 10 or 15 this year dealing with either juveniles or somebody else that didn't come home overnight. And this one is very different in all aspects, said Rushing. Like the sheriff said, we want somebody knows June 1st, June 2nd, somebody talked to my brother. Somebody had to have seen my brother. Who? Come forward and tell us. We just want to know, said Melissa Estes. So what did happen through this time frame? Here's kind of a synopsis of the information that came out during the Unfound episode on this case. So whatever fight happens. The wife does hit him with the car, and she drives off to the police station. I believe he decides that he's leaving the scene. Then I don't know how he figures this out, but he knows that previously when he has disappeared on his wife, that she would call in his truck as stolen to the company, and they would actually run a trace on where his truck is. I believe it's part of the Uconnect system that's in Dodge trucks. So he decides he's going to disable the Uconnect system. He pulls the breaker for it, or the fuse for it. Which, by the way, I thought was I'm like, well, what kind of anti-theft system is that if you could just pull the breaker for it? But within like 5 minutes of online searching, I was able to find the breakers that you do need to pull to do that. And I don't know that it's a theft deterrent system necessarily. It's a system that handles all kinds of stuff like navigation, and I think even your phone connects through it and all that. So maybe it doesn't need to be as well hidden as a true theft deterrent system, but it is certainly believable that he pulled the fuse and he disabled that system. But then he left the truck on the land where his home with his wife was, but not immediately around the home, like somewhere back in the property, somewhere kind of buried out by the line, the property line somewhere, like in the brush or something like that. And there's a little bit of an interesting aspect that's going on there, because the land is partially owned by Cindy's father, essentially his soon-to-be former father-in-law, but other family members own part of this land as well. So they talked about this on the Unfound podcast, that have they searched that area? You know, we know where the truck was found. Did they search around the truck? And they really haven't. And they're citing that, well, you've got all these family members, and essentially they would all have to agree to a search. Suspicious? Possibly, but police are saying that they got his phone pinging from his home, his new home, when he was speaking to his friend later, after he ditched the truck there. So is the truck location really important in this missing persons case? I don't think so, because we do have the pings that are happening after that. We've got confirmation that he was actually speaking to his friend, unless you think his friend's involved in this and is lying about that aspect for some reason. But there's another twist. He called a neighbor, a new neighbor of his that lives right across the street from him, and asked her for a ride once he dropped off his truck. So she went and got him, brought him back to her place. They kind of talked about what was going on. He said he was going to go talk to the police about what was happening, and then went over to his home. She kept an eye on his home to see what was going on and didn't see anyone really coming or going, but did notice police were kind of driving up and down the road. And at some point they created a roadblock as well on that street. So seems pretty clear the police are looking for him. At one point, he is speaking to, I can't remember who it is. I think it might be his friend again, on the phone, and saying that he's just going to go out and talk to police, that he sees the police driving back and forth in front of his house. You know, he's going to go talk to them and see if he can get this squared up. And then that's pretty much the last that anyone hears of him. So once again, that is on June 2nd. But we've got a ride that he's given from a neighbor of his. We've got a friend that he's speaking to. We've got police identifying the pings. We've got police saying that they were given information about where the truck was from the friend, and that actually turned out to be true. The family didn't notice the truck there. And keep in mind, the truck's not found for a matter of a few weeks after his disappearance. And some people are wondering about that too. Like, well, why wouldn't her family have noticed, hey, there's a big white Dodge Ram sitting over there? I don't know. It could be that the property is just that large, or that they don't service that part of it regularly. But we've got all these factors that he is certainly around at least for a day and a half up to 2 days after whatever blowout happened between him and his estranged wife on the 31st. Here at dailyleader.com, Jonathan Estes was last seen in person on June 1st, 2018. Someone spoke to him the day after that, then he vanished. Melissa Estes filed a missing person report. When she reported him missing, he was already listed in the National Criminal Information Center because of charges filed by his ex-wife. The two had separated in April of 2018, and things got heated when Estes delivered divorce papers to her May 31st, 2018, his sister said. Estes's truck was found in a field nearly 2 weeks after he went missing, but Lincoln County Sheriff Steve Rushing said investigators were able to determine that Estes left it there. Estes's wife filed for divorce in October of 2018, and it was finalized in January, even with the defendant missing. It appears he hasn't contacted his children or anyone else since he disappeared. The case is still active, and the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, along with the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, continues to search for a trail that could lead them to Estes. There's been no activity from Estes since he went missing. Without any new leads, investigators have been sifting through information already gathered, hoping for a break in the case, Rushing said. As a matter of fact, I saw him interviewed in one of those video clips, and he says they're looking back to social media. They're just digging every which way they can. And he included, they're Googling, they're Facebooking, they're just trying to get a beat on where this guy is. And you have to imagine it could be a challenge with someone that is used to working on remote job sites. He's probably pretty handy in terms of finding work that maybe would be paid under the table, where he wouldn't have to use a social security card or something traceable like that. So it could be that if he is literally on the run, he's probably pretty well suited to do that. Now, if he is on the run, he didn't take his truck. It seems like his wife sold off whatever tools were left back at the home. One of those things actually becomes an issue we're going to touch on by the end of this video. But that's another thing that people are really looking at. It appears that his wife started selling off a lot of his property fairly quickly. What I'm curious about is in the YouTube video where he's arguing with her, he's being very clear about a few items. He's talking about that he's taken the TV, he's taken the Nintendo Wii, and he's taken the bed. I'm curious to know what happened with those items. Did they wind up in her home, or did she wind up selling them? I don't know. And I don't know that it's necessarily an indication of any kind of fault or blame that we could kind of put, well, look, he disappeared. Now she's selling all his stuff. Yeah, well, they're really not getting along very well at this point. She's actually heading into a bankruptcy. So it doesn't really blow my mind that she might be selling stuff, maybe that she doesn't even have the right to actually sell. Seems like she's probably pretty desperate if her finances are so out of whack at that point. Or maybe she's being vindictive. Maybe she's just selling his stuff to be nasty. That could happen even if he was still around. So I don't see that as necessarily an indicator that, well, they must know he's not coming back because she's selling all his stuff. It could be. I just don't think it's a solid indicator to make that conclusion. Back to what Sheriff Rushing is saying here. There's no indication of foul play, but we have every option open. We've had several versions of different leads, but nothing's panned out. Over at cdapress.com, Carl Estes, John's father, said that prior to going missing, John was in frequent communication with people in North Idaho. So obviously we want to call that out. It could be that he's out of the Mississippi area. Like I said, this is a guy that travels. So he could have found work in North Idaho. Maybe he could have already completed that job and moved on from there. But his father's calling out North Idaho, so I want to share that with you guys. There is a $25,000 reward for information leading to finding John. He's an industrial construction worker with an estranged wife, a 14-year-old daughter, and an 11-year-old son. And once again, I just have to put it out there. These kids don't deserve to be missing their father. It's bad enough if, I don't know if he's so ashamed or something really bad did happen on the 31st and he's embarrassed to come back, or if someone actually took him from this family. But one way or another, these kids are missing out. They're the ones that are really hurt in all this. So I really hope that there's a conclusion out there to bring them. I want them to have their father back, but if that can't be possible, they definitely deserve answers for what's going on with all this. Especially after looking through his Facebook, it seems like he was very, very close with his kids. Even in that YouTube video, you can hear his kids come up to him at one point, and he's telling them how much he's missed them and how much he loves them. And they seem to be responding to that like it's normal, like not like he's necessarily saying anything that they don't hear very often. So, yeah, there's the real victims in this case, from my perspective, are those kids. Carl said the last time he spoke with his son on June 1st, John sounded broken. John was born in Kellogg and lived in Post Falls from 1993 to 2003. He attended Post Falls High. Carl, his father, was a pastor at multiple churches in the inland Northwest, while Beverly Estes, his mother, was a nurse at hospitals in Kellogg and Spokane. Carl describes his son as outgoing and likable. Over at WJTV, we get some updates on what's happening with some aspects of this story. And once again, his sister Melissa just working hard to raise exposure to this. By the way, they are a family of 5 siblings. So Melissa really stepping up to try to help Jonathan. Melissa Estes, Jonathan's sister, has been working to find any tips. The sheriff's department has subpoenaed his bank records. There's been no activity on his bank records. It's like he just vanished and fell off the face of the earth, she said. She says the only trace they have of John is his truck. She says the truck was first turned over to his ex-wife, but due to back payments was repossessed and then sold in Florida. Quote, we found it in Florida, but we wanted the owner who bought it to contact us. We kind of wanted to see what kind of information we could get from the GPS on the truck. However, the new owner has not responded. Melissa explained that she's been able to get into John's email and social media accounts, but there's no trace of where he could be. Just a quick update on that, because, you know, one of the aspects to covering these cases is helping other families that are in this situation. And Melissa did something kind of interesting here to get access to his accounts. It looks like John used two-party authentication or 2-key authentication, but essentially, like when you try to log into a service, it would send a code to your cell phone, and then you'd have to use that code to actually log into the service. She started doing that, and then she didn't know where she could go with it because they didn't have his cell phone. But she decided, well, I'm going to keep calling his cell phone in case it ever gets, turned back on. I don't know if she didn't realize, but apparently they had shut down his phone account, and a teenage boy wound up getting a new phone for Christmas, and it had the same phone number. So the phone number got reassigned to a whole different phone. Luckily, she spoke to the boy's mother, and they were very helpful. And anytime she needed a code sent so she could access one of these accounts, she basically spoke to them. They said, yep, we've got the code. Here it is. And there you go. So that's how she was able to access several of his accounts. Continuing here, he's everybody's friend. He's loyal. He's a hard worker. He's a daddy first and foremost. His children were his life. That's why he worked so hard. She also has a message for John. We love you. We miss you. I don't care what happened or what went wrong. Just come home. Whatever it is, if you left on your own, we can work through this. Definitely true. As a matter of fact, the sheriff even kind of pipes up in one of these articles specifically saying that essentially what happened was they took those charges that his wife tried to make and ran them through a grand jury, and the grand jury said, we don't have enough information here. We can't press these charges. So the charges have all been essentially dropped. There's really nothing for him to be running from. She's already gone through a bankruptcy, which I'm sure wiped out probably several accounts that she shared with him. So that can't really be a factor. So honestly, if he's on the run out there, it's a big question of why. And I don't know that it's logical, but these things are very emotional, and it could be that, like I said, he was so embarrassed about what happened that night, or something bad did happen, maybe not exactly what she went and tried to charge him with, something along those lines that would maybe keep him away from home. But for this long, we're looking at over a year now. He's got 2 children that are in years where they're just growing extremely fast, and he's missing all kinds of opportunities to create new memories with them. So it really does make you think. And of course, I've looked into some cases where people that are concerned that they're going to lose custody of their children can do some very bizarre and, quite honestly, nasty things. Is that what we're looking at here? Has something happened to him because of a potential custody battle? I don't know. It's one of those things that I think we have to stay open to. There is a Facebook page for Find John Estes, and there's an interesting post here that was made March 21st. The mobile home that he shared with his wife and his kids, the mobile home on the Wallace property was, according to one of John's friends, gotten rid of. Carl Estes, John's father, said that Cindy sold all of John's belongings. Then Cindy moved with their children to a new town. Once again, I was talking to you guys about how the kids lose in situations like this. The kids haven't really had contact with John's side of the family since all this went down. I did also see a post from the friend that spoke to Jonathan on that last day before Jonathan disappeared. And that friend said he had also spoke to Jonathan's son, and basically that Jonathan's son is being told that he's not going to see his father ever again. Now, once again, is that an indicator that who's saying that to him knows that Jonathan is not with us anymore? Or are we talking about just pretty standard argument type stuff that you hear in separations like this? I don't know. But I did run into that post, and also that post was mentioned in conversation that the host of Unfound had with the same guy. So on top of all this, we then get this really strange twist that they had a bobcat. Jonathan had a bobcat, basically, a little, like a mini bulldozer that you would sometimes use it for lifting things or, digging stuff out. I don't know if it was in Jonathan's name. I think it was actually in his father's name, but it seems like Cindy sold it. And they were putting out the word on Facebook, trying to find it, and they have found it. And it looks like they've actually proven that she sold it. And from the comments I'm seeing, it looks like she might have changed the name on who the owner was or something along those lines. So essentially, there could be charges towards Cindy right now in terms of her selling something that wasn't her own property. I can't find any news articles on that aspect, but just another strange development in all this. As usual, in the description box below, you'll find links to all the sources that we looked at together today. On top of that, I will also have a link to the Unfound podcast, so you can listen to the interview with Melissa. It's 2.5 hours long. It's a really long interview, but there's a lot of great information in there. Also, a link to Web Sleuths. It's only one page, unfortunately, but it's a good jumping point if you're looking for some more info on this case. And they are trying to raise funds primarily for... They want to raise awareness by buying a billboard and offering the reward, of course, on the billboard. From the Facebook posts I've seen, I think the billboard's actually already up. So they're just looking to try to keep funds coming in to keep paying for it month after month. You can see they've only raised $150 so far, but on behalf of myself and my amazing supporters on PayPal and Patreon, we are going to make a donation to this GoFundMe just as soon as I'm done filming today's episode. And if you have information that can help in this case, in the description box below, right at the top, I've got the contact details that you need. Please use it. Please help this family. Not only do we have his sister, who is brokenhearted, working on this as hard as possible, obviously his father also showing up in these articles as well, but there are the 2 children that really deserve to have their dad in their lives. And I know this is a tough situation. I know this couple seems like they didn't treat each other very well. This is really beyond all that. The marriage is over. So how do we bring this father back to these children? That's really what today's about, and I hope that you'll help me do that. Please share this video. He can be anywhere, so we really need to focus on the U.S. If you've got friends in the U.S., share this video with them. If you're moved by this story, if you want to help these children find their father, please, please, please share this video with them. Let's help this family. They need it. They really do. Thank you so much for joining me here on Searchlight. Before we end today's video, I have several people to thank. New Patreon supporters, starting with Captain of My Soul. Thank you, Captain. Melissa Quint, Shirley Brewer, Amanda, Summer Casey, and Susanna Lozano. Thank you all so much for the support on Patreon. On top of that, we've had a few people increase their pledges. Rob Boss, thank you so much. Shay Marshall, thank you as well. Take care, everyone. I'll see you back here on Friday with a brand new episode of Brainscratch on the Lord and Arts channel.